Palucci. I am the client experience lead here at Homestack. And today with us is Chris Giannos. Hey, Chris.
Hi, how are you? I'm excited to be here. This is going to be awesome.
Yes, we also have Evie Simon here. She is from our Homestack client experience lead team as well. And Chris is amazing. He literally just got off a plane with Tom Ferry. So he's fresh off the plane with Tom, and he's going to tell us everything they talked about on their flight, of course. Just kidding. He is also a leader in the real estate SaaS community, just like we are, and he has his own real estate tech company called Humanize.io, and he can fill us in a little bit about that as well. So welcome, Chris.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Rachel. I'm excited to jump in and share, I guess, all of the knowledge I've collected over the years in both being an agent and a team leader and working at Zillow and now building Humanize. So I've got a really unique perspective that I think is going to be awesome to share with everyone.
Yes. So years ago, I know that you and Evie worked at Zillow together.
Yep.
And that is kind of how this all came together. So Ev, fill us in a little bit about why you wanted to bring Chris on and how he can kind of bring this into the app experience.
Definitely. So we have done a great job, I think, over like the last quarter or two, really pushing on our clients the importance of lead generation and getting people into that ecosystem, really top funnel. And I do think that there is an importance that needs to be put on really milking your database and getting what you can out of it and getting that true conversion happening so that all of the work that you're doing up front is ending in closes, commissions, dollar signs, repeat business. And sometimes for some reason, I talk to agents all over the country and they're like, yeah, but I'm not getting the RI, I'm not closing business. And I'm looking at their databases and they're loaded with these leads and contacts and highly active users. And I'm just wondering, like, what's going on here? So I do think that we wanted to bring some education today, which this is right in Chris's wheelhouse, really creating that relationship, getting the conversion happening, focusing on the activities and actions and behaviors that actually end in results. And I think that that's going to be a huge learning point here today that people can get a lot to take away from the meeting. Also, just changes in the market, different things. I hear a lot of whining going on, and I think that's always a good time to get some cold hard facts delivered so that you can be better at your job and at the end of the day make more money.
Sure. I can talk about this stuff all day. So let me actually go ahead and share my screen, and I've got a deck prepared and I'll kind of run through some basics of this thing. If you guys are open to it, you should be able to see my screen now. Can you guys confirm that, Rachel? We were good? Sweet.
Beautiful.
Before we jump into this, just to kind of give you guys a quick lay of the land of what we're going to talk about. I think that there's a lot of in our industry right now, a lot of people that might not necessarily be qualified to talk about things like this, right? That kind of just want to spew knowledge and, oh, I did 2 or 3 transactions, so therefore I am an expert and I'm going to become a coach or a teacher, whatever it may be. I want to share with you guys kind of a little bit about my background for just 5 seconds. So hey, there's a reason why I'm qualified to talk about this stuff. And then we're going to jump into breaking down some mindset issues that I see a lot of the time with lead conversion. Lead conversion, there are no bad leads, and we're going to get into that here momentarily. And we'll end on some more tactical stuff. So how can we have more conversations? What does the quality of those conversations look like? Little nuances along the conversion path that no one's really talking about. A lot of the time we think in our heads, oh my gosh, we went and bought Zillow leads or Realtor.com leads or whatever it may be. And if we buy them and we answer the phone, we're just going to close a bunch of deals and it's going to be great. And we're going to make millions of dollars. And that's not the case. If that's the case, I would be retired by now, right? So we'll talk about that briefly and kind of how that whole thing works. So 4 things I'll talk about with you guys today, depending on time frame. I'm going to give you a quick intro. We'll go a quick overview of what the online lead space looks like and where all these different leads are coming from, just at a 30,000 foot view, so we have some context. We're going to talk about actually converting leads in general, right? What those conversations sound like, what the conversion process looks like, and how to actually do it the right way. And then everything that I talk about today in a short amount of time that we're not going to have a super in-depth amount of time to go through, I'm going to give you a resource where you can go and download it. So I have all this stuff already loaded into a drive. You guys will get sent a link on it. You can download all the content. There's a bajillion things in here that we'll talk about that obviously I can't go super deep on. So don't have to worry about taking pictures of slides. You'll have a copy of everything. It'll be awesome and we'll rock and roll. Does this sound like a good plan? Cool. Now, just to give you guys a quick intro of me, yes, that shaved head in this picture. I've since grown my hair out a little bit. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Humanize. If you guys have curiosities about Humanize, you can look it up. I'm not going to talk about it too much. Speaker and a coach. I built a real estate team in SoCal, actually in the same office that Evie's in right now. Over the course of 2.5 years, we sold like $1 billion in real estate. This was between 2020 and 2023. I've personally distributed or worked around 100,000 online leads. So I had a 250 person team. I worked at Zillow. I then started buying Zillow leads. I then got a Zillow Flex account. I've bought and worked pretty much any lead you can get on the internet at some way, shape, or form, or given it to a native in my team and taught them how to actually work those things. If anyone's a budding startup investor or startup person and has an idea or anything like that, DM me on Instagram. I love to hear about this stuff. And I've been in the space for about 10 years now. So I've been on the Zillow side, the solo agent side, the team leader side, and now on the SaaS side, building a product. So my perspective is very wide. And I've done a lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about myself today, like personally in the past. For the scripts and stuff, I'll walk you guys through that at the end. You can download them. You can DM me a keyword on Instagram. I'll show you what that looks like here momentarily. So if any of you guys are on social media, feel free to follow me. Now, to get your mind in the right place, there's like a little bit of a myth in our industry, right? And the myth is that all I need to be focused on is more leads, more conversations, more. And the reason I say it's a myth is because I think that before you focus on increasing the number of conversations you have, you should be focusing on improving the quality of those conversations that you have first, right? There are no bad leads. I promise you. And I know some of you are like rolling your eyes right now with your cameras off going, oh my God, Chris, you're a sellout. You're a cop-out. I promise you there are no bad leads. And I know why this is true. I'll give you an example. We'd gotten about 1,500 Zillow leads a month between 2020 and 2021, right? Over the course of a year. That's a lot of leads. Converting them around 8 to 12% on average, right? Which is above industry standard. But I did a little bit of an exercise during that period of time. And I had an inside salesperson on my team call through all those leads after the course of a year that didn't convert, quote unquote. And what we found was that about 40% of those leads that were generated over a course of a year ended up purchasing a home, right? Of that 40%, about 10% of them did it with us. The other 30% did it with someone else. So the way I want you to think about this is there are no bad leads. There are just leads that might take a little bit longer to convert, and that's okay. That's where having a website completely dialed in where we can control the search experience comes into play. That's where keeping in contact with our customers and continually having conversations and poking them with things of value is going to become now more important than it's ever been, especially with the NAR settlement stuff going down, right? You're no longer going to be able to show a house without having a buyer representation agreement signed, at least for that one property. Do we think that it's going to get a little interesting over the next 6 to 9 months? Interesting is about the only word for it. There's a lot of people in this space right now that are doing the fear-mongering thing and, oh my gosh, it's so scary and the sky is falling and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, it's going to be interesting is the best word to describe it, right? But you're going to have to do something different to get something different. So before we jump into the overview or the tactical part of this, I want you to take all of the bias you have off, take your bias hat off, and come at this from an open mind. Maybe there is a different way to do what I've been doing. And sure, awesome. If you're someone that can tell me successfully right now, Chris, I am crushing it. I don't need to change anything about my process. I'm doing 100 deals a year as a solo agent. Fantastic. That's awesome. Congratulations. You've cracked the code. This is fantastic. But for everyone else that's going, maybe there's something I can learn here. Maybe there's 1 or 2 things that I can take. And I'm not saying, Chris, oh my God, scrap your entire process and do it my way. Maybe there's 1 or 2 things that you can take from this and go and implement in your business that'll help you positively move the needle, right? So do I have everyone's brains at least somewhat open in some way, shape, or form? Cool. Let's talk a little bit about what good lead means in this space. When I hear good leads, if anyone has any definitions of what a good lead looks like for me, when I hear this usually in the space, good lead in realtor lingo, and I know this because I am an agent and I can speak like this, is someone that's going to come in, buy the first house they see, or list their house with me after one appointment that's going to pay me a full commission. And it's going to be absolutely awesome. What percentage of the time does that happen with little to no effort? 1 out of 100, 1 out of 200, 300, you get a lay down. I want you to just be cognizant of there are no good or bad leads, right? Sure, you get a SpongeBob SquarePants with a phone number that's like 420-6969. That's probably not a very good lead, right? That's a bogus lead for the most part. But people that have a genuine interest in some way, shape, or form, buying, selling, or renting even, it's important that you remember that pipeline, for those of you guys that haven't been in like an actual sales role, W-2 and in corporate environment or whatever it may be, you build pipeline. The work you put in now, it compounds. It's like compounding interest. The only way to do that is continually filling your pipeline. It doesn't matter if someone's ready to buy in a month or 6 years or 10 years, because I'm going to keep that person in my database. I'm going to keep them in my ecosystem using my website. And guess what? When their time comes, I get that hand raiser. And then all of a sudden I have these months where I've got 3, 5, 7, 10 escrows popping because I've now built this pipeline, right? But there's things you have to do to ensure that happens. So get the thing out of your brain. There's good leads and bad leads. There's leads that are ready now and leads that are ready later. That's the best way to look at it. Does that make sense? To give you guys like a 30,000 foot view, and again, I'm not going to go super deep into this because a lot of this stuff is common sense. There's about a bajillion different lead sources out there. There's literally 5 or 6 different ones on this plate now. You add in things like repeat referral business. You've got your past clients. You've got open houses. There's about 1 million different websites. The point I want to make here before I go any further is that if your customers are using any of these websites, right, with the exception of social media, beyond just the initial interaction you have with them, you're in a very risk-exposed place. And what I mean by that is, if you have any clients now that you're working with that are on the buy side that are sending you Zillow links, that are sending you realtor.com links, that are sending you Redfin links when they find a new property they like, guess what? That might not be your customer as much as you think it is, right? Because the thing that happens that's magical is they find themselves on one of these websites. They go, oh, Evie's out of town this weekend. I don't want to bug her and I want to see that house. They submit an inquiry and then guess what happens? It goes to someone that's not you. And then you're in a pickle, right? So there's about 1 million different lead sources, right? When you add in your SOI and your repeat referral and open house and all that stuff, it all adds up very quickly. The key is having a standardized, duplicable process for your customers that you're going to work with. What I would encourage you to think about is, I would double dog dare you to think about your process now and how you have interaction. For the most part, if you've been in the business for a while, I don't know about you, but I walk into a listing presentation, which I don't do a whole lot anymore. But when I do, it's like riding a bike. It just comes back and I just blah and just throw up and the same thing comes out every single time. Sometimes when I don't have like a defined standardized process like that, if I'm tired or I'm off my game or I was driving to school and someone pissed me off on the freeway and I got a little road rage, whatever it may be, life happens. If you don't have a standardized duplicable process, then what happens is there's variance in what type of consumer experience people have. I would encourage you to think about how the modern consumer is now. For those of you guys that have done your extensive research into the NAR settlement that's coming, right? I don't know if you guys saw this a couple of days ago. They decide this is it, right? It's not a matter of if that is the proposed statement now or proposed settlement. It's a matter of when. And the when is in early July. That proposed settlement they put out, that is now how it's going to be, if you did not see that already. With that being said, I've heard a lot of, what's the word I want to use here? I guess like friction maybe from the agent community. I talk to a lot of different team leaders, brokers, real estate agents all over the country on a weekly basis. I just ended a 3-day tour. We were in 3 different states, talked to thousands of real estate agents over the last couple of days. There's a lot of, I know my value, right? I'm not going to work with a buyer unless X, Y, and Z happens. And I know my value and blah, blah, blah. That's fantastic. That's important, right? You know your value. Congratulations. How would you feel if you were on the other end of that right now from a consumer standpoint, right? Consumers, I don't know about you guys. I'm a consumer and I'm spoiled rotten. I'll give you an example. Last night I was having dinner and I was super tired afterwards. And I was like, okay, I got to Uber home. I'd gone straight from the airport to this restaurant. pick up my phone, I pull it up, I call an Uber, and it's like spinning and spinning and spinning. There was a basketball game last night in Dallas at American Airlines Center, and I was right next to there. Spinning and spinning and spinning. Your driver's 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away. And I was like, this is a pain in the ass. I don't want to wait that long. So what did I do? I pulled out my phone and I called a Lyft, right? And guess what? For whatever reason, Lyft was less busy. Dude pulled up in a black Suburban 3 minutes later, and I was on my merry way to my house. That type of consumer expectation now is bleeding over into everything, right? Think about the last time 10, 15 years ago, right? Before Amazon was a thing. You go on eBay or whatever e-commerce site, you buy something. If it was in your house in 2 weeks, you're pumped. Now, if I go on Amazon and I order something and it's not at my house by the latest overnight, by 4 a.m. or 8 a.m., that little slot they have, I'm like, this is a ripoff, right? That type of consumer expectation is now bleeding across into every single thing that we do and every service-based industry as well. I would encourage you to think about the last time you had a bad service-based industry expectation, whether it be a restaurant, you had a bad waiter or waitress, you went to a bar, you ordered a cocktail, the bartender made it wrong, whatever it may be. As consumers, we are spoiled rotten now. And that is starting to bleed over into everything. And I say that myself, I'm spoiled rotten as a consumer. We all are, but it bleeds over into everything. The reason why most agents fail with online leads specifically is this right here. When it comes down to it, even on your bad days, you have to be good, because guess what? If you're not, there are about 2.2 million licensed real estate agents in the United States. That's a lot. 54% of them haven't sold a house in the last 12 months, which is horrifying, but that's a whole nother story. Knowing that if you're not the best you can be, every interaction you have with a customer, someone else will be. And guess what? They might win. And that's a scary place to be. Converting leads, whether it's be online sources or repeat and referral or open house or door knocking or whatever it may be, it's all the same thing. It's having a standardized framework to produce a consistent, constant outcome at scale, so that every interaction you have, whether it's the initial conversation you have with a customer, all the way up to post-closing and you're following up with them after they've moved in the house and you're just calling to see how everything's moving and with their settlement, all that cool stuff. When you have a standardized, duplicable way to actually have those conversations, which I'm going to walk you through here momentarily, you produce confidence and consistency in your business, right? The reason why we see so many agents do the pinball thing, right? And if you don't know what the pinball thing is, you're a new agent, open a couple escrows, babysit your escrows, they close, you stop prospecting while you're working those deals, and you go rich, poor, rich, poor, rich, poor. 0 deals, 5 deals, 0 deals, 5 deals. It's a lack of consistency, right? It's something that's so easily correctable by having a standardized, duplicable process that it's not even funny. So knowing that in 9 out of 10 cases with all the agents I talk to, there's usually room for a little bit of consistency and SOP in the business. I'm going to walk you guys through a pretty basic framework and some scripts and ways to have conversations so that we're all on the same page. So converting leads specifically, I want to give you a quick overview of the process. When we think about what a funnel looks like of leads, remember there are no bad leads. There are leads that just take a little bit longer to go through the funnel. I've broken it up into a couple of pieces, and this is all of the scripts and talk tracks that you guys are going to have access to. It's broken down step by step because I don't want you to have customers in your brain when you're envisioning your funnel or in your app where you're keeping track of all these leads. I don't want you to be in a spot where you're like, oh, well, I have 7,000 different people and they're all 7,000 at different places in their search or their listing process or whatever it may be. When you standardize and define what your funnel looks like, then it's really easy to figure out how frequently should I be following up with people and what do those conversations actually sound like. So the first bucket of people are going to live in this intake space, right? This is initial conversation that you're having with people. This is a new lead, so to speak. During that intake process, you're going to be doing things like what? Figuring out what their time frame looks like, what they're looking for in their next house, when they're potentially talking about listing their property. This is like the speed dating phase, so to speak, right? It's an initial interaction. All you're really trying to figure out is what is the next step? Am I moving this person forward in the funnel? Are they going to live here a while? Am I going to move them into a nurture type thing where I'm just frequently touching base with them with something of value? But it's important to figure that out, right? Because if you've got a new lead that just sits and sits and sits and sits and sits, and you're not really doing a whole lot of work to figure out what the next step is with that person, guess what happens? You don't have a standardized defined funnel. Next is going to be before the appointment. I want to talk to you about this part specifically. I think that conversion, and I might be insane in thinking this, I don't think conversion is as hard as people make it. I think that people forget about the weird little nuances that happen between parts and pieces of this funnel. Most agents, brains, and team leaders that I talk to, it's okay, well, I got a lead. What happens next is like I get in front of that person in some way, shape, or form. What about the work that happens before you get in front of that person? How do you prepare for when you're actually going to get face to face with someone? You're maximizing the opportunity and really nailing it, right? So before the appointment and what that prep work looks like, and I'll show you what that looks like here momentarily. Next is going to be your showing or consultation. Now, in this new world, which this deck is not updated for, you've got this opportunity where the way to think about it is, in most cases, in most states, you're not going to be able to show a house without a buyer broker agreement signed in some way, shape, or form. It's just not going to be possible. If you're like in the DMV area, you're like, Chris, we've been doing this for a long time. DC, Maryland, and Virginia, this is normal. Most other places, it's not, right? Unless you're in Canada. In Canada, this has been a thing for like 10 or 15 years at this point, I think. So you guys are like, Chris, no big deal, business as usual, right? But knowing that you're now going to have a conversation with someone before you can go and show them a property, this consultation becomes now more important than ever. And if you don't have a way to stand out when you're going to have to negotiate what your compensation looks like, what kind of position do we think that puts us in? Do we have all the leverage like we did before, where we know if we show up to a property and we show someone, if we get that offer accepted, there's compensation on the other end for us? That's going a little fuzzy right now. It's getting a little weird. So the next stage is going to be that showing and consultation. We've got our follow-up stage. I talk to, I don't know, probably 100 different agents on a monthly basis, right? About all this stuff. This is the single biggest opportunity for most agents, right? Evie was talking about it earlier. You don't need more leads. You need to call the ones you have more frequently, right? I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. You don't need more leads. You need to call the ones you have more frequently. But Chris, what am I going to say? How am I going to have those conversations? What happens if I piss them off? You don't know you're calling someone too much, right? Until they tell you to stop calling them. And I'm not saying brute force, be a jerk. Usually what happens when people become like telephone terrorists, right? And just blow people up for no reason. The flip side of the coin is if you call without value, you become a nuisance, right? What do I mean by that? Calling someone and saying, hey, Evie, it's Chris Giannos from ABC Realty. Just wanted to call and check in and see how you're doing. How's your search going? How's everything coming along? What you're actually saying in consumer speak is, hey, Evie, I'm calling to see if you're ready to buy your house or not because I'm getting impatient and I want my paycheck, right? That's what the consumer actually hears versus, hey, Evie, I'm giving you a quick call. I don't know if you saw the text message I sent you this morning, but there's a house at 123 ABC Street that I found that I think you're absolutely going to love. Now, I know we're a little bit out from you actually making a decision and when you're going to move, but with that being said, I'd still like to show you the house purely because I want you to see what your money's going to get you, right? If you're not available to go check it out this weekend, maybe I could shoot you over a quick little video tour of it. I'm happy to go and preview it for you. What do you think? Do you see the difference between those two things? Right? There's a massive difference. Every time you follow up with someone, bringing value in some way, shape, or form is going to be super important. And included in this download folder that I'm going to give you guys, there's a full presentation on there on something called Pokeballs, right? Which I have no idea why we named it that, but Tom and I spun something up. Pokeballs are 15 different ways that you can reach out to a customer and essentially poke them and say, hey, I'm an agent. Don't forget about me, but here's something of value. Whether it be a news article, whether it be a video tour, or, hey, I was just thinking about you. I saw this house on 123 ABC Street. They have it priced at $599. What do you think? Right? Something to just get a conversation started with someone. So in that download folder, make sure you look for that Pokeballs thing because that is exactly what's going to help you follow up more effectively. The last thing is going to be writing offers. Again, Chris, I've written a gajillion offers. I'm so good at it. I have a full process broken down end to end on a checklist of how you can actually get offers submitted at a higher rate, accepted at a higher rate with a listing agent. Those conversations start before the appointment. Those conversations and getting offers accepted. If you're anything like me, I got on the phone with a listing agent initially. My whole goal that first phone call was to what? Make them my BFF. I wanted that person to remember my name because if they remembered my name, guess what happened? When I called them after that showing and said, oh my God, Evie, listen, Mike is so stoked on that house. I want to know, I know initially we talked about 123 ABC Street and the price point being X, Y, and Z. What do I need to do to get him this house? right? I want to make sure that I'm telling him what your sellers need and more importantly, what you need out of this deal so that we can make this thing work. Do we think if I had that conversation super early with Evie that when it comes time to get an offer accepted, I'm going to win? Yeah, more statistically likely. I've had agents, and if this is this is you, I'm not throwing a dig at you, but I've had agents on listings I've had within the last 12 months where someone has sent over like a blind offer without even calling me. They texted me and said, I sold an investment property in Venice Beach, listed it myself, got text messages. Hey, can I show 1512 Marketplace tomorrow at 4:00? Yes, you can. Rock and roll. Goes out, shows the property. 3 days later, I get an offer in my inbox with no phone call, literally just an email saying, hey, here's the offer. Let me know what you think. I'm like, dude, what? That makes no sense. So getting a standardized process on how you're actually going to be writing these offers is going to be super important. I'm going to walk you through it at warp speed now. So intake specifically, I want you to remember there's two different buckets of people when you're in that intake phase. You have leads and you have prospects, right? There's a big difference and it's important to remember these two things. Leads are in that top to middle of funnel, right? They're in a spot where you don't really know if they're even serious or not. There's varying levels of communication. You might not have actually made a whole lot of contact with them yet. Predominantly one-way communication. I don't know if you've played a one-sided game of phone tag ever. That's my usual crack joke, right? When I'm calling someone and I've left them 3 or 4 voicemails at a game at any point in time. Hey, Evie, it's Chris. We're playing the most intense game of one-sided phone tag on the planet now, but I received your inquiry on 123 ABC Street. I wanted to make sure you got any questions you had answered. Please call me back, tag you're it, and hang up the phone. To a complete stranger, making it fun and inviting like that, right? You're several steps away from actually understanding where this customer is going to be. The prospect is a little bit different. Ooh, we got something in the chat. Feel free to go 15 more minutes, Chris. You got it, Evie. Prospect, this is going to be like people that are lower in the middle of the funnel, right? They're qualified for purchase, intent, and ability. We understand that this person is a lead that is going to transact. Now, the question is whether it's going to transact with us. You've got two-way communication established. I don't know about you guys, but like, there's a great feeling that happens when you get an online lead in some way, shape, or form, and you text them, and the first time they text you back, it's like a first kiss with the person you marry, right? It's magic. You're like, oh my God, this person replied to me. This feels awesome. And I know someone in the audience right now is smiling, going, holy shit, I know that feeling. It's wild, right? And they're one step from actualization. Most cases, a prospect, you got to find them a house, you got to put them into escrow. So important to remember that. To talk a little bit about some scripts, there's a million different scripts, but the example I'm going to give you is the example that I like to use with most types of online leads. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, Chris, well, does this work with Zillow leads and Realtor.com and Google Pay? It works with all of them in some way, shape, or form, right? This is an appointment closing script. I want you to treat every single lead that you get moving forward, every type of inquiry you get in some way, shape, or form, regardless if it's coming from Google or Facebook or Instagram or Zillow or Realtor.com, wherever it's coming from, remember that your whole goal of that initial conversation is to get in front of them as fast as humanly possible. We don't want to be in a spot. I've heard it a million times. Well, Chris, I break bread with people on the first call and I have 45, 50, 60-minute phone calls and I really go deep. That's awesome, right? And again, I'm not saying your way's wrong and my way's right. What I'm encouraging you to just thinking about on the inverse of this whole thing is, are we more effective when we're in person? 100%. I was just on, again, a bunch of events recently. I promise you, when you get face-to-face with your customers, you can reach out and touch them. You can have a conversation with them. They can see your body language and feel your energy. You're going to be exponentially more effective, right? So a script like this, where you've got bullet pointed conversation talking points. I'm not a fan of, hey, read this script like a robot, right? Just have this same conversation over and over and over again and only read it just like Chris wrote it. You're going to sound like a Chris sock puppet. You don't want to do that. You want to take these bullet points and make them your own. The script is very basic. It goes through 5 points. Setting the appointment, the very first thing you do, because that's the most important thing and why you're talking to them. Figuring out where, why, summarizing the phone call, and then getting off in some way, shape, or form. The way I want you to think about customers is people make decisions when they're clear and they feel good about what decision they're making. If you're not quickly wrapping up and summarizing your phone calls before you move on, that's when people do weird things. I'll give you an example. You get a Realtor.com lead, you have a conversation with them, you set an appointment to go see a property, you don't summarize, you don't give them a clear next steps of what's going to happen after you hang up the phone. They hang up the phone. 5 minutes later, they get a call from another agent. I don't know if I'm giving anyone on the call PTSD, but like that happens. Sometimes lead gets sent to multiple people. Consumers confused now. Well, why I just talked to Evie and why are you calling me and what's happening? Versus if I would have been on that phone call and said, okay, cool. So here's what's going to happen next, Evie. As soon as I hang up the phone, I'm going to shoot you a text message with all of my contact information so you know exactly how to get a hold of me. If any other questions come up, you speak to any other agents or anything like that, all you got to do is give them my phone number and I'll handle it, right? Making sure that you've established that quickly. So then they get another phone call. Yeah, call my agent. Here's his phone number, right? It's a cool spot to be in. People make decisions when they're clear and they understand what's going to happen next. And we should be focusing on creating clarity from the very first conversation we have with someone. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. So again, you'll have this script in that talk track bucket that I'm going to give you guys. I want to talk to you quickly about something of process, right? I'm going to breeze through the next one of these quickly because I obviously want to have time for Q&A and with whatever Evie wants to talk about. But start thinking about if you standardize your process and you do the same thing over and over and over again, you leave no room for human error. I don't know about you, but I am a human. I'm about as human as it gets. I royally screw up tons of things in my life pretty regularly, right? Which is why now I have like a COO at our company, Humanize, who like her job is to tell me no and keep me in line because I'm a spaz. A lot of us aren't there yet, right? This is my first time experiencing this. It's completely new in my business. It's less than a year old. Like here, cool, getting some leverage. If you don't have a COO in your business or an operations person or whoever that may be, you kind of have to police yourself. And I don't know about you guys, but for the most part, a lot of the good real estate agents I know on a DISC assessment are like high I, high D, right? Which is what? We're like human golden retrievers, right? Like, wee, everything's great. We're kind of wild and crazy. That's fantastic, but sometimes that creates a lack of process in our business, which leads to things falling through the cracks. I know what you're thinking, Chris. Well, if I'm going to call and schedule an appointment, why should I have a checklist? I've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years. Perfect. This is even more of a reason why I guarantee there's a couple things on here that you might not be doing yet. I'm not saying scrap your process. I'm saying pick one or two, right? Add them to what you're doing now. The first thing you're going to do after you get off every single phone call forever, no matter what, moving forward in some way, shape, or form, even if it's with an existing client, is send them a text message of what's going to happen next or a quick summary of your phone call, right? I want them to just constantly be being poked by you in some way, shape, or form that you are a real estate agent, you are alive, and you are here to help, right? So for this example, we're summarizing quickly what happened on that initial phone call that we just hung up on. We're now going to go through a couple of different things. The first thing we're going to do is call that other party. Let's say we scheduled a showing with the buyer. We're going to go in now and show a house. We have to call that listing agent. I know what you're thinking, Chris. Well, what happens if in the MLS it says, don't call, here's the remarks, blah, 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 blah. If you want to get more offers accepted for your customers, and I know in most markets for the most part right now, we're still in a multiple offer situation, even with rates where they're at. If you want to get more offers accepted, you have to front load the work. You can't just go with what the world says. And I know there's probably a couple listing agents on this phone that are like, oh, Chris, you're the annoying agent that I never want to talk to because you can't follow instructions. Even if in the MLS it says, don't call, don't blah, 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 I pick up the phone, right? Because you're trying to, it's not about you versus the listing agent, or the listing agent versus you. It's about the customer. It's about them having a good experience. So I've got a script that's in this download. There's 3 questions that you need to figure out every single time you call a listing agent before you ever step foot in a house. 3 questions and 3 questions only. What does a good price look like on the house? When are they presenting offers? And what kind of special terms is seller or agent looking for? If you can figure out those 3 things, guess what? When you're in that house later with that customer and you're walking them through it and they go, oh my gosh, Evie, this is the one. What do I have to do? This is fantastic. You don't have to kill all their momentum and say, okay, cool. Evie, let me call the other party. Let's shut everything down. Let's turn the lights off. Let's get out of here. You go home, you have dinner, you're tired with your family. I'm going to call the other party. It might take a couple of days for me to get a hold of them. And then I'm going to call you back frantically with my hair on fire because they're submitting offers or presenting offers at Friday night at 4:00 and it's Friday at 2:00. And now we're in a really shitty rushed position because I wasn't prepared. right? That's what your customers hear. Sometimes people aren't going to be super adept to give you this information out of the gate. Sometimes you got to kind of draw it out of them a little bit. But I promise you, if you notice while I'm talking right now, what am I doing? I'm sitting here standing at a standing desk, right? I'm talking with my hands, I'm smiling, and you guys are like, oh my God, this guy's a psycho, please stop. It brings across a different level of energy on the call. And when you do the same thing when you're talking to people, sure, sometimes you're going to get that realtor that doesn't really want to talk to you a whole lot. But guess what? You catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar, right? Come at these people smiley and excited and full of energy in some way, shape, or form. More often than not, I'm not saying you're going to win every time and get all the information, but more often than not, 6.5, maybe 7 out of 10 times, you can at least get some basics from them that are going to make you more effective than other agents. Does that make sense to you guys? So using this script and checkpointing all this stuff is going to be super important. I'm going to go through the next couple of things quickly because I want to get you to getting offers accepted. Printing out a buyer package, you should never show up to a showing every single time with any customer ever without a full buyer package prepared, right? There's an example in this thing that I'm going to give you to download, but it's bringing relevant information so that if they need to make a decision on the spot, you have all of it available and you don't have to give it to them later. Things like comps, square footage, HO, every piece of information that they're going to need in that house, I want you to have it prepared and ready in a nice little package for them so that they can make a decision on the spot. You've identified a couple of different homes because obviously people never buy the first home they see. You always want to show them multiples. You've put your appointment in the Google Calendar so they actually show up and they're not going to flake on you. Has anyone ever set up a bunch of showings and had someone flake? I'm not saying using a Google Calendar will fix that, but it will for sure help, right? And then obviously updating your CRM and all that cool stuff. Listing agent conversation will be in there as well. I want to talk to you about showing property the right way. Now, I know what you're thinking. You guys can't tell. I've kind of got like this mind reader thing going on. I've had this conversation with a lot of different people. Chris, I have a process. Chris, I've done X, Y, and Z. I want you to think about how you learned how to do it, right? I was in California with CRMLS, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. I asked a room full of like 1,500 people how they learned to show property. And most of them said, well, I kind of just wing it, right? Got on YouTube, watched a video, did X, Y, and Z. I would encourage you to think about, just because you've been doing it for that long, does it mean it's perfect and there's no room for improvement? And the answer, if you're anything like me, which is constant student, trying to be coached, I want to get really, really good, I want to maximize my potential, we're never as good as we think we are. And there's always room for improvement in some way, shape, or form. Getting and setting up an expectation for you to be more than a door opener is super important. For those of you guys that are familiar with working online leads, I don't know if you've ever had a door opener situation, but you show up, client walks through the house and goes, cool, Evie, thank you so much, we'll be in contact, and they walk out. Does that feel good as an agent? No, it feels like we got used. It's not a really cool feeling. And I know someone on this call is like, he's right? It's not a fun feeling. So setting up and making sure that you have both an intro script and a what happens after the showing. There should never be a situation. If you meet with a client in some way, shape, or form, you should never leave that appointment without a defined second appointment on the books. Even if the defined second appointment is a phone call, right? Or if it's a Zoom or whatever it is, you can never just, what do you think? Right? And then expect the customer to just go, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll call you when I'm ready. And they set a reminder in their phone to call you. That's not going to happen. Life happens. They get busy. It turns into a shit show. So this intro script that's in here, GPS, you're going to game plan. You're going to prepare what you prepared for them or present what you prepared for them. You're going to summarize some stats of the house. This is all happens before they even walk inside. Right? And again, I'm not going to read this thing verbatim for you. It'll be in that package that I'm going to give you guys in that folder. But this is before they even enter the house, you've now given them a little bit of a presentation on why you're valuable as an agent, right? After the showing or at the office after, whatever it may be, I've got a full buyer consultation that is a full hour-and-a-half long training in itself that I don't have time to walk you guys through here today. If you're not doing buyer consultations now, they're not going to be optional in less than 90 days. And I'm going to say that again. I'm not a fear-mongering jerk. I'm being real with you. In less than 90 days, this will not be optional because you, if you're working with a buyer, are going to have to get them to sign a buyer broker agreement that defines your compensation before you're allowed to do anything. Now is not the time to kick the can down the street unless you plan on retiring in like 65 days. If you're at the end of your career and you're like, Chris, peace out, deuces, earned it, I'm going to go retire and hang out. Fantastic. I wish you fair winds and fair seas. Go do your thing. If you're not there yet, don't wait. Don't kick the can down the street and go, I'll deal with it when it becomes a problem. Because guess what? The people that prepare themselves and get really good at buyer consultations now and start doing the practice it takes to get good at something are going to eat your lunch in 90 days. And I don't know about you, but I don't like it when other people eat my lunch. I'm hungry and I want to work too. Does that make sense to everyone? So in this folder, there will be a full walkthrough of this buyer consultation. You can go through it. This process is standardized if you guys haven't noticed. It's step by step. You just have to move people back, forward, wherever they're at. Make sure that it's clear so you know which part of the process you're on. This, I'm not even going to harp on too much. You guys know you need to make more phone calls than you're making now, right? And that doesn't feel good to hear. We've got a lot of shit going on. The way I usually frame this to my clients and people that I coach is really simple. What are you doing for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Let's pretend we had quote unquote real jobs, which I know to be like a top high producing real estate agent, you're not working 40 hours a week, you're working 60 or 70, right? For the most part, you're burning the candle at both ends. But for those of you guys that might be just getting started or building your pipeline or whatever it may be, I would encourage you to think about, what am I doing 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? And if the answer is not working or prospecting or trying to fill my pipeline, you can't get upset by the results you didn't get from the work you did not do. Mic drop. Like, I know that sounds gross and it's kind of confrontational, but as agents, we don't have the ability to be upset unless we're emptying the tank. Following up to Evie's point, what we talked about earlier, you don't need more leads. You need to improve the quality of the conversations you're having. You need to use the tools that you have. Keep people on your website. Keep people in your app, right? So that when they do transact, you're not going to be perfect. You have the ability to keep people in your ecosystem by using the tools that you have, but they're not going to use themselves. It helps mitigate room for human error and you dropping the ball on follow-up. But at the end of the day, it's going to take some sort of effort to keep them in there. Does that make sense to everyone? The last thing I'll talk about, and then we can talk about Q&A. I've got a full offer submission checklist that's in this drive as well. This is a step-by-step guide on how to get an offer accepted. So when do you use this? Let's say you have a client who goes, I'm ready to buy. I want this house. Let's rock and roll. Before you do anything, you run through this entire checklist. And again, I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, step by step and page by page, but there's about 10 or 15 different checklist items on here. It's going to put you in a spot where you're uncomfortable. I'll highlight one down here where you're going to go, well, Chris, I don't like being on camera. That's okay. Other people do, and they might win in situations like this. You're going to call or text or video message your buyer, letting them know that the offer was submitted and you will update them shortly. The immediate following bullet point. I know I skipped down, but the other stuff's kind of common sense. Wait 5 minutes, then send the listing agent a video message, letting them know you just submitted the best offer on the planet and you are looking forward to working with them. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be different. Do something different, get something different. You think they're getting a text message from any other agent that submitted on their property with a quick little video going, hey, Bob, it's Chris Giannos with ABC Realty. I just wanted to let you know it's been awesome speaking with you. I just sent you an offer from my client, Susie. She's super pumped on this house, dude. We sent over a really buttoned up offer. All of the listing agents, or excuse me, lenders' contact information is in there. If there's anything else we can do to put her in a position to win here, please just shoot me a message, man. Keep me posted. I'm here to rock and roll. Let's do this. They get that. And I promise you, I've done this a bajillion times. Usually they reply back like, whoa, that's just so cool. Right. And then guess what? They're impressed with your process. They're impressed with how far you're going with your customer. Do you think when they go and advocate to the seller about which offer they think they should submit, that you might be a little closer to the top of the stack because you've done such a good job up to here? The answer is yes. I know it works because I've coached it for the last 3-4 years of building my own team and doing this thing. You do more, you get more. It's just the way the world works. You put in more effort, you get things out. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. Most importantly, before we wrap this up, keep these people in your ecosystem, right? To Evie's point earlier, talking about using your app, using your own website. If you have customers that are in your funnel now that are sending you Zillow links of properties or Redfin links of properties or Realtor.com links of properties, you are losing, because I promise you, there's nothing those websites want more. And I know this because I meet with them regularly, right? I know what their business plans look like. I was in a meeting yesterday with the CEO of Realtor.com and their VP of revenue. I know what they're trying to do. They want people to go on their websites and submit inquiries and get connected with agents because they make money. That's how the world works. Just remember, if they're sending you these links, you are losing. How do you correct this? It's really simple. You get a link from a customer, you pick up the phone, call them. Hey, Evie, the reason for my call is I saw that you sent me over those Redfin links. Thank you so much for sending me those over. I understand you want to see those houses. I want to make sure you get set up on my website. I want to make sure you get set up on my app so that anytime you have any questions or comments or concerns about a property, all you got to do is push a button in there. It'll notify me on my end and I can get in and jump in and save the day, right? It's a very simple corrective conversation, but if you're not having it, again, you can't get upset by the results you didn't get from the work you did not do. Cool? All right, sweet. I know I have a tendency to just throw up a ton of information. If you guys can't tell, I love this stuff. This is like the biggest passion I have on the planet. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, we have some time for that. If you want all this content, this is my Instagram handle. If you're not on Instagram, you should get on Instagram, is about the only thing I'll say. If you follow me, that's my username. It's chris.giannos, so that's my last name. If you DM me the keyword scripts, you don't have to put any quotation marks or anything around it. It'll shoot you an email in the next couple, or excuse me, a DM in the next couple of hours with a Google Drive link where you can download all this stuff we talked about today. So I hope this was helpful. I know some of you probably want to punch me in the face, and that's okay, right? We're never going to like pull punches or rip the Band-Aid off. And we have some time for Q&A, I'm pretty sure, too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was incredible. Like Chris said, we have time for Q&A. So as we wrap this up and talk about some closing items here, please feel free to use the Q&A box and we'll do our best to either answer you on the back end through a direct message or answer it live. That was awesome. I think it's such an important piece of content to take away because the biggest thing at the end of the day is setting yourself apart from your competition, right? Like Chris said, it's like that other agent's going to be the next call. And so to not preemptively plan for that is kind of crazy. So having those standardized processes and really not just having the processes, but in those bringing true value. They're not empty messages. They're not just these like cookie cutter templates that are being sent out. But when you really put the thought process behind the messaging and bringing that value, I think it's huge. So how are we getting these messages to these people, right? There's a lot of vehicles to do this with. There's picking up the phone, they're sending text messages. A lot of you are already in teams or brokerages that are equipping you with amazing CRMs. Obviously, everyone on the phone today has their app. These tools, when they're used right, is helping you work smarter, not harder. Obviously, you're working with a lot of different clients. You're in the field. There's a lot going on. But the biggest mistake I see is not sitting down and taking the time to put these parts together so that you're setting up yourself for success. A lot of times it's like set it and forget it. You really cannot do that. You have to sit down. You have to map this out. You have to put the effort behind it because that's really what's going to set you apart.
I do that a lot, Evie, to your point of like, well, hey, I've got automatic email drip set up, or hey, I've got automatic this set up. That's awesome. That will for sure help keep things from falling through the cracks. But I promise you that an email, I don't know, I'd encourage you guys to think about your own personal email inbox. My email address that I've had since I was 13 years old, right, has like 150,000 emails in it, right? I'm not seeing all the drips. Nothing is more powerful than a face-to-face interaction. The second most impactful is what we're doing right now over Zoom like this. The third most impactful is over the phone. Right. So make sure you're not afraid of the phone.
Absolutely. And, you know, when it comes to who we do business with, I always say it's the person that brings us value backed up with the person that's the most convenient to work with. If someone's not answering the phone, if I'm not getting a response, game over, just like the Uber Lyft comparison. I do the same thing all the time. Something that's incredible about the app that we are constantly harping on is there's more of a directness when it comes to it. It's not perfect, but it's there. And just like I use this comparison, that true story of me and both of my teenage daughters all had braces at one time. There was a lot of visits going on to the ortho, to the dentist. It was just chaos. And I had to choose going to my regular dentist who had an ortho there or going to a separate ortho office. It was a mess. I went with the one that had an app that was sending me reminders, direct messages, letting me like upload my payment through the app. It was so convenient. I didn't have to like break a sweat to make my appointments or do anything. And that's how most businesses are operating, right? We all have an app for everything. And the people on today's call chose to have an app for their real estate business so that they had a place to kind of bring that technology to the consumer. But if you're not using it, what's it there for? You have the ability to send out custom push notifications, which are boom, right to the front of the phone. You can yeah, you literally go in there and type your push notification. This can go to your farm and say, community garage sale this Saturday, I'll be there with the mimosas. Whatever you want to do, you get this direct connection straight to their phone. It's such a unique offering. It's such a great way to communicate. You have the in-app chat. You can schedule out your push notifications in advance. You have the ability to put people on these, automated property alerts. There's so many different things that you can do with it. And we talk about that, day in and day out, which today we wanted to make it a little different and really focus on the conversions. But with that being said, the tools that you use are going to leave an imprint on the consumer. If I'm getting a push notification with really cool stuff going on in my community, and getting, market updates and things that are actually really important to me, things that aren't going to wait for an email, for me to open an email if I even open it. If it's something that's important and you're cutting through all the noise and getting that delivered to your phone, that I promise you that's going to set an impression compared to your competitor. So the reason you have this app is because you want to set that impression. You want to close more business. You want to provide value to the consumer, give them that best experience possible. But what today we really wanted to drive home is, what are you sending? How are you sending? Is this process standardized? I mean, there is such a great opportunity between your CRM and between your app to really truly create this strategy and this plan. Sit down, put the work in, make the plan and stick to it. And I just am really excited to see what difference it's going to make in your everyday business.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. The key word you said there is do the work.
For sure.
Which is the tough thing. Rachel, did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just reading what everyone else was typing in on the back end. No, I love everything that Evie was saying. I think you're like bringing the value with the app. And then like Chris said, the push notifications and stuff are kind of like the pokeballs, right? It's kind of like what's keeping you like in front of people, like, hey, I'm still here. Hey, this is what's going on. So I like that combo.
And I love to, like, the other thing is, Chris mentioned a great point too. There's no such thing as a bad lead. They might just take longer, right? And when you have the right ecosystems in place, that's okay. You start to build confidence in your database, because just like any sales job anyone's ever had, they say my pipeline's going to bust. You have this feeling of like, okay, it's like science. It's only a matter of time before a certain amount of things close. You can truly forecast when it comes to this, only if your systems are put in place properly and you're nurturing properly. So when you look at that, you also have another side of things, which sneak peek announcements, guys, in a few weeks, we're going to be releasing Agent Insights 2.0, which is a whole new layer of analytics that you're going to be getting on each and every buyer and seller in your app. But these analytics, when you go in, I hear people, oh, I haven't gone to that page in a while. Are you crazy? You got to look at what these people are doing. You need to process that information and act on it, because these are the telltale signs of when to call who and how. And so when you see somebody that hasn't really communicated with you or been looking at property in 2 years, and they're all of a sudden on there constantly looking at stuff every day for 3 days straight, who am I calling that day? Who am I showing up with the fruit basket? Like whatever. Like, you need to take this information and really act upon it, because that is truly servicing the consumer too. You're being helpful, you're showing up at the right time. But none of that's going to happen if you don't do the work to get them off of the big portals and into your ecosystem to begin with.
What I'll share with you is, if you're not paying attention to those things, Zillow is.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not paying attention to your customers' search behavior with it, like everything Evie's talking about, that's fine. Zillow and Realtor.com and Redfin are, right? And they want your clients. How do I know that from like a fact standpoint, right? So just be conscious of those things. I keep coming back to it. I'm going to keep saying it. I know it's corny as all hell, but like, you can't be upset from the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. Like it's the truest thing ever. And it's so applicable inside real estate. So all good points for sure. Evie and Rachel, I got to jump onto my next call, but thank you for your guys' time. This was absolutely awesome. If anyone wants to connect over social media outside of the scripts or anything, like shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to chat. And I hope to see you guys all again soon.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much,
Guys.
Awesome. I think we are pretty good. I just saw a few thank yous coming through the Q&A. We had a question, is there any tutorials about converting the app for leads? If you check out on our website, if you go to resources and click on training, there's a plethora of videos and resources there with a lot of great information. And then I know Tammy, hi Tammy, research in CRMs and leaning towards Follow Boss. What are your thoughts since they are owned by Zillow now? I would say any CRM is better than no CRM, but I am definitely a fan of Follow Up Boss. It is interesting that they did get bought out by Zillow, but I don't really see that as a problem as of right now. But that could change in the future, so that's hard to say. But I'm sure they're going to want to keep servicing those clients because it's a huge business and they have a lot of faithful clients over there. And then Rachel's checking out that training page right now. You can see we have our blog posts and lots of good stuff there to lean on. And of course, we bring these meetings to you either every month or every other month. I know we're going a little over our time, so we're about to wrap up. If there's any other questions, we'll try to get back to you guys, but we thank you for your time today and hope you got something out of this. And definitely encourage you guys to go download those scripts and get that downloadable folder. Lots of great stuff in there.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.